thanks for coming. Thanks for coming to hang out with me. It'll be about 20 minutes at best. I'll ask you guys to interact a little bit so that way you know what you're doing, things like that. The intent is injury prevention for your shoulder. In this area of expertise, I guess I should say, is this sport, you'll see some shoulder issues, you will see a lot of hand issues, concussion, and I'll touch on a lot of that. But the exercises that I'm going to provide for you guys, we're going to be catered a little bit more towards the shoulder. Okay? A little bit about me and how I know Louie. I am a doctor in physical therapy. I specialize in sports. My specialty of sports is going to be basketball, gymnastics, performing arts, baseball, and softball. I grew to really enjoy and respect this sport. I got the privilege of working in the sidelines for the pandemic punch-out recently and got to see firsthand at the amateur level. I had gone to see a live boxing match down in Laredo, Texas. It was just an experience. I enjoyed it. And so now I'm just kind of trying to spread a lot of the preventative measures that may not be taken in this sport for the shoulder. So that's why I'm here today. So if you guys have any questions, this is really informal. So feel free to ask at any point in time. Just say, hey, Dee, I have a question about XYZ. So please do. Thanks for joining. Okay, so let's get started. This is what we're going to cover today. I'm going to cover briefly about the shoulder. Right? Anatomy is just what makes up your shoulder. Physiology is how your body actually moves, how your shoulder functions. So I'll touch on that. Common injuries, I already touched on that a little bit. We'll talk about 3 or 4 of them that you'll see commonly for this sport. I already mentioned about the prevention exercises. And if you guys pay attention, there might be a little bit of a pop quiz that might involve a free shirt. Who doesn't like something free? And it may or may not be the shirt that Louie is already wearing. Okay? So pay attention, guys. It just makes it so much better. It makes it stick better if you actually interact with me. If not, well, then hang out. No big deal. Okay, let's move on. So we'll talk about your shoulder, the static stabilizers, and the dynamic stabilizers. Why do you need to know that? What's the importance of it? So you can have shoulder pain very, very commonly that are going to involve just the muscles. What about that shoulder pain that's a constant ache? That lives there, that doesn't really go away over time? Then you're going away from these dynamic stabilizers and moving into these, what they're called static stabilizers. What are those? They're ligaments. These are all the ligaments that keep your shoulder intact. So let's say I dissected your shoulder, took out the muscles, and then you were just left with these bad boys. Your shoulder would still be able to stay there, but it wouldn't be as functional. Then if you take away these ligaments, you have what is called a labrum. A labrum acts like a vacuum seal to keep that humeral bone in its socket. It's also, just stepping back from all of this, your shoulder joint is incredible. It's one of the few joints that can do an air guitar, right? Go all the way around. Baseball, I mean, you're talking about all ranges of motion, also known as a multiplanar joint. So you need to get these ligaments, they are there. You don't want to mess with them. You want to keep them intact. You skin that off, and then you have that little cushion that's in between this scapula and your humeral head, right? So these are going to be there. You need to take care of them. How do you take care of them? You got to keep these bad boys strong, working as a team. If you have one muscle that isn't firing, and one of the most common ones is going to be right here, the supraspinatus muscle, then it's going to make these muscles go in overdrive. Then you get a real common ache right in here known as shoulder impingement, okay? That can be very irritating. It could also, you could probably punch through it, you could play through it, you can tolerate the symptoms, and you can manage it, but at 80%. Imagine going up against another athlete that's at 100%. They're not dealing with this because they're doing shoulder exercises that help prevent that irritation to this area. Everyone still with me? Okay, so if we can get all of these muscles to constantly fire as a team, you're protecting these ligaments, and you're also protecting that cushion in between there. Does anyone remember what that cushion is? Labrum. Okay, you don't have to remember the names. I just want you to know that there's a lot to the shoulder joint and how important it is to actually make these muscles work for you. Also keep these protected so you don't have any problems. You can provide all of that force, not just through your shoulder, through your entire body, and then make impact with the opponent. No, the labrum is going to be right in the middle. Okay, so it's literally that cushion. And the way I like to describe the labrum are cotton balls. You mash together a lot of cotton balls, and you put it in between there. It is a very sensitive structure. So if that structure is not being protected by all of these ligaments that could potentially suffer a tear or something like that, that's going to come from, again, these muscles that are not firing as a team. It's very common for these muscles not to work together. If let's say one day you're in a bout and you punched incorrectly once and you felt a sharp pain, but you can keep going through it. I'm pretty sure you guys' pain threshold is way higher than mine. I own it. It's okay. I don't have a very high pain threshold. But what I'm getting at is you experience this quick irritation. You go through it at the end of the day. You're like, gosh, it's really aching. It may have been at that one point. You might have pinched down on that muscle because this muscle wasn't ready to fire in time, or something like that. Egg before the chicken, chicken before the egg, something like that. What I'm getting at is if we make these muscles work together constantly, even when you are fatigued, we shouldn't have this problem. And obviously longevity is important in the sport of boxing, or in any sport for that matter. Okay? Does everyone kind of have an understanding now of what the shoulder is made up of? Muscles, ligaments, and what's that little cushion in the middle? Yes. All right. Good. Good. We got somewhere. We know what's going on in the shoulder now. Now we can move on. I feel confident. Okay. Then we also deal with injuries to the hand. Okay, you guys know that. Does anyone know the common, and this might be a shirt giveaway kind of thing, so I'm going to put this in now. Does anyone know the common fracture that one experiences in the hand? What is the name of it? That's close. So you got the bone down. You're going to kick yourself when I say the name of it. Does anyone want to give it a shot? What's up? No, that's a close one, though. Nobody? No one? No one? Ooh, it's okay. I'm going to tell you guys. You want me to tell you? You're going to be mad. It's called a boxer's fracture. Isn't that frustrating? Okay. It's okay. So you got it right, though. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but what I want to touch on, you have a lot of joints that make up your hand, or articulating surfaces that again, make up the hand area. You have these metacarpals, you have these phalanges and XYZ. You don't really need to I don't need to go into detail about that. But what I want to make you aware of is all these little joint spaces. When you pop your fingers, all that stuff, it's common. Then you have the carpal bones here. Now that boxer's fracture that I talked about, you got it right, Richard, is right around this base of the fifth metacarpal. Okay, and I'm going to talk about that, show you a picture, and actually educate you on what it looks like. It's a very common injury that occurs, but in terms of injury prevention, you can't really prevent that unless you don't know how to hit properly. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know how to hit properly. That's not my expertise. But just wanted to shine some light on it. So going away from the bones, just look at all these muscles that make up your hands. Does anyone know how many layers of muscles are in the hand? I refreshed my memory last night, so yes! Louie, I can't give you a shirt. That was good. There's 5 layers of muscles. It's crazy. So can you generate power from your hand? Yes or no? You can, because there's a lot of muscles, but not necessarily. When you punch, where do you punch from? Your body or from your arm? Your body, hands down. So even though there is a lot of muscle here, that was awesome. Even though there is a lot of muscle here, it's not necessarily going to mean you're going to hit harder. You don't go working out your hands every day. Like I'm going to go to the gym and do open and close exercises with my hand. You don't hear that, even though there's a lot of muscles. Okay, so this is just an anatomy of breaking down the 2 common areas that I'm going to touch on: the shoulder, muscles, ligaments, and the labrum; the hand, the joints, and all the layers of muscles that make it up. There's a ton of injuries that can happen, but for specific to boxing, we talked about that most common fracture that occurs in the hand, which is boxer's fracture. Okay, and can we prevent it? Unless you learn how to hit properly. So at this point, I'm assuming you guys know how to hit. So we'll move on from there. Let's talk about common injuries now. We talked about the shoulder. I've already introduced to what's going on at that area, right? I know I couldn't find one, Louis. That's my bad. You're right, though. Can anyone tell me what they see in this picture? Does it look normal, first and foremost? It does not look normal, and you're correct. It is dislocated. So let's kind of point out the obvious. This looks nice and round, good musculature. What's going on over here? Exactly. So how did that happen? Does anyone know how that can happen? Yeah. I mean, there's a number of things. He punched and the muscles weren't ready is always how I like to term it. And there wasn't enough of that body involvement, and then his shoulder just went out. Or history of injury. If you've already injured your shoulder in the past, you better be diligent about doing these exercises that I'm going to show you. This can happen, and I see it rather frequently. I did a lot of research USA Boxing, Title Boxing, there isn't a ton of research that is specified to boxing. It incorporates MMA, it incorporates karate, it incorporates wrestling. So in the boxing era or in the boxing sport, you will see this that occurs, and it's really when it's later in the rounds, okay, when you're getting fatigued and you're just kind of flailing your arms around. You don't do that. It's pretty simple. Just don't do that. But how can we prevent that from happening? We'll talk a little bit more about that, okay? Proper form is exactly right, and then exercises. So this is kind of what happened here. This is going downward. These are other dislocations that can occur. It can actually go towards the front, but this is going to happen. Well, I mean, let's just see the obvious here. You can see that space that's there. You can also see that space that lives there. And that little bony prominence is this bony prominence right here. That's your clavicle. It's just sticking up now, okay? And it can also go backwards. This happens a lot in linemen. You think about when they're here and then they push, and the gentleman, the athlete that's in front of them pushes back. They're not ready, and it just pops back, right? This happens. I mean, these two presentations are very similar. This is in a downward motion, right? When they're swinging across, and it can just slide out in the anterior or in the forward direction, and this is going in the downward direction. That can happen from, I mean, these two, again, fall hand in hand. So we'll just kind of say that in this realm.
Do you think missing the punch?
Yeah. There's no impact. You're correct. You are hitting with an intent to hit something, correct? You're not trying to miss. So when you're swinging, you have to have good what is called joint position awareness. So when you're swinging, right, you are with the intent to at least hit some object. And if you don't know how to decelerate and make these muscles fire behind you, then you have that likelihood of it going out of its socket. It doesn't happen all the time. You can miss and be just fine. But if you're starting to do this number because you're tired, just swinging your arms around, that's when you're more susceptible to getting this type of injury. Okay, so you have to be aware of where your opponent is. Don't just close your eyes and swing. I've seen it happen before. Not very common, but I've seen it. You want to be able to swing with an intent hit with an intent and not just hope for the best. That's how you can avoid or at least reduce the likelihood of something like that happening. Cool? So let's talk about boxer's fracture. Can anyone tell me what they see here? Looking at these two hands, what is the difference? Swollen, yeah, that's true. And what hand are we looking at, left or right? Right, exactly. Where at? The pinky, right in here. So everyone do me a favor, put your hands up, make a fist, and go ahead and turn them. Are all your knuckles pretty even? You don't see a dip in anything specific? Like you can see this one here. Okay, that's good. Everyone okay? I don't think anyone has a boxer's fracture yet. Or not yet, doesn't have one. It's going to be pretty pronounced. You're going to see a lot of swelling here. It's going to be very tender, and it's going to hurt. Okay, you'll feel it almost on impact. Okay, I've never experienced one, but I've worked with 3 other boxers that had this same issue. It's not terrible therapy. It's just very tedious. Basically, you're going to the gym to open and close your hand to get the muscles back. Because how many layers of muscle make up your hand? Yes, 5. Perfect. Okay, so, and you already touched on it, Richard. It's the fracture of the 5th metacarpal. So you just have to let it heal. You're in a cast. You can decorate it if you want. I don't really care. But you have to give it rest and allow it to heal appropriately in order to start introducing impact again to your hand. Okay? Any questions on the boxer's fracture? This is just an x-ray. If you ever experience this, which I hope none of you guys do, might as well look at your x-ray and see what it looks like. You're going to see a very common presentation like that. Cool? All right, guys. Stay with me. Concussion. Has anyone had a concussion here? You had one? You had one? Yeah, okay. But a better worded question would be, who has reported their concussion? That's always a good one. So concussions happen in the sport. We all know this. You are obviously trying to target the head. The head is not meant to move the way, or if you take that impact, if we look way down, well, not way down here, you can see how the impact's made right in front of the face. This is a poor depiction. He's getting hit in the cheek, but it's fine. Just roll with it. You get hit here. The actual cranium, which is the hard part of your head, is getting pushed backward. In your actual brain, you have fluid that encapsulates the brain. It's just water. Has anyone ever seen the movie Concussion? It's really interesting. It's a very good explanation. You put a red ball in in a cup of water and just move it around. That's what your brain is doing inside your brain. That's what your brain is doing inside your cranium. There's no protection for your brain. So anytime you receive a hit, you are taking a lot of impact, okay? And one thing I learned while I was at the pandemic punch out, the doctor that was on site was really talking to how many hits the athlete receives and what the time frame is that they need to be seated out 2 weeks, a week, even if they win, depending on how much they're taking on. And I can respect that. That's awesome. Because your brain is just not protected. Even with the padding that they put around your head, it doesn't do very much. I'm not naysaying it. I'm just preparing you guys, or at least educating you on when you get hit and you feel weird, if you feel dizzy, if you don't know where you're at, take a step back and remember that you're causing a lot of jarring on that brain, and you want to make sure that you give it rest. You strain a muscle, you give it rest. You strain your brain, you have to give it rest. No stimulation. Literally thinking is tough, okay? So respect it if you have these type of symptoms. Headache, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, those kinds of things. If you are experiencing that, respect it and give yourself some time to recover. There's a lot of guidelines out there, so I'm not going to bore you with them. In boxing, I understand they're a little bit different in terms of timelines, and I can't dive into it because I don't know enough about it. But I do understand that there are strict guidelines that are provided. They actually write it in your card, all that good stuff, and so I think that's great. You know, you're respecting the fact that your brain got worked, or vice versa. Even if you did win, you did take a lot of hits. Now, when you get to the professional level, you're getting paid to do it. So you're going to take hits, and I'm optimistic that they take this adequate amount of rest to make sure that they're recovering appropriately. So fingers crossed in that light. Any questions about concussion? Good. I was hoping it was straightforward. This one's always fun when I talk about posture, right? Now, with seasoned athletes that I've spoken with that are in boxing or that have been in boxing for a period of time, know that you need to be upright and hands guarding your face. When I do see a lot of my younger athletes that I've worked with in the past tend to hunch forward, this may be good in the ring. I'm not going to correct that. But what I do want to point to is we're going to go all the way back to the shoulder. This area right here, that's called your subacromial space. It's a very small space. So if you have poor posture just in general, so if you stay here, all of these muscles in here are getting pinched on, okay? And the common muscle that's getting pinched on, does anyone remember the name of it? Supraspinatus. I didn't expect you guys to remember because I had to think about it. But the point is, you're closing down that space, you're closing down on that supraspinatus, and then you're going to create issues for it. Let's say you're constantly training in this position, right? You get so adapted to this position, you're always here. Here goes the day-to-day basis. You're working in front of a computer. You're still here. If you're in the ring, that's just your stance. Okay, that's fine. But once you get out of the ring, once you get out of training, I encourage you to get those shoulders back to open up this space right here. And it's as simple as just sitting up. Now, like when you sit up, it's almost like, okay, I'm getting tired because those muscles aren't used to it. It's just plain and simple. I'm guilty of it. But the muscles that make up, you're looking at the back part of the shoulder. These muscles are constantly put on stretch when you're leaning forward. You carry that over in the ring. You carry that over in here. You're just putting it more on stretch, closing down that space, creating impingement on, I just said the name of that muscle, supraspinatus. And then when you constantly have that ache, when you're dealing with the ache, then you're starting to get into the ligaments, right? And then what's below the ligaments? The labrum. So now this is all going from the poor posture here. I understand, like this was from expertboxing.com. I really liked the picture. This was a good depiction of how you should be standing, but then again, with certain combinations, you're gonna go into this position to protect yourself, is what I understand to be true. So you can do that here. I'm not saying don't. What I am saying is once you get out of here, find yourself with an upright position to protect those shoulder muscles so you can generate the power to make impact safely and then keep you in the ring longer. Does all that make sense? Poor posture can feed into something bigger than what we think, right? I undergo some shoulder issues. I train in the CrossFit setting a little bit and trying to go into overhead. If I find myself documenting for a period of time and then I go try and do an overhead, like a snatch movement or something, It's not happening because I made that muscle fatigue, and now I'm trying to ask for it to do too much overhead. Does that make sense? So something as small as posture goes a long way, guys. Humor me. If I see you in the streets, I'll be like standing like this. It's not because I'm trying to show off anything. It's because I want you to stand up right, okay? So now we finally made it. I gave you guys anatomy on the shoulder. I gave you guys anatomy on the hand. You know a little bit more about it going into the days to come for training. Think about it. I just want to make it an awareness piece for you guys. When you're out training, by all means, go to town, put in the work, do what it takes to get to where you want to be, right? But if you want to be in this sport for the long term, do something as simple as sitting upright. You know what muscles are there, you know what ligaments are there, you know what makes up the shoulder, so protect them, fire them, and this is what I'm about to show you. So I'm going to touch on all of it. I'm going to have a guide here available for Louie. You guys can take it completely for free. The biggest thing that I want to see happen is you guys don't have to ever come to me for an injury. Granted, it's still a business. If you ever do need me, I'm here. But this is a good way to keep you away from coming to hang out with me. I'm not that bad of a person, so it might be okay. So we made it to injury prevention. Let's touch on it. These are one of my teammates that I worked with. She helped me. She was the model. So we talked about the posture. How can we assist with getting that posture better? Is there a foam roller here? If there's not a foam roller, don't worry about it. Yeah, bring it on, bring it on. I can show you guys. And I also brought my own PVC pipe. These are things that, there it is.
Victoria will be your model.
If you want, otherwise you can sit there. You're good, you can sit there. Let me take a drink real quick. What I want to touch on is these warm-ups in general don't go longer than 5 to 8 minutes. If you go through it pretty deliberately, you'll be done and you can get to training. I'm not necessarily going to show you, but I did want to make sure that there is access to a foam roller, so you guys cannot say that there isn't one. So thanks for grabbing it. In terms of demonstrating, it's really not that hard. Actually, have you ever foam rolled? Okay, good. Well, come and join me. So go ahead and lay on it. I'm just going to touch on this briefly. When you lay on it, cross your arms over your chest. No, here, don't worry about it. Careful with your hair because I always get my hair. Support your neck if you can. Good. Now, 2 things you can do perfect. She lifted her hips up already. And how I do this, it says times 10, right? So you want to go all the way up. Very good. And then bring it on down. Awesome. Right where you start feeling more tightness, lift your hips up even higher and stop briefly. Come towards me. That's like rep 3. So there you can actually push down a little bit further. There you go. And then come on down, lift yourself up. And then again, lean back a little further. Very good. Awesome. So foam rolling, it's not anything, thank you. It's not anything crazy. It's just something to help you, again, reminder for what? What are we addressing there? Does anyone know? Your thoracic spine. Okay, and the thoracic spine is associated with our posture. So if you have tight spine through there, you're going to feel it. And I encourage you guys just to roll on it. It says 10 times. I had her go up and down. That counts as 1. So you're going to feel it move through each segment, and it's going to help with getting you upright. Cool? You can have a seat if you want. You can just leave it there. The next thing is a PVC pipe. I brought one, and I don't know if you guys have one. You don't need one. You could use a broomstick. Okay? So you go through this first 10 times. That she did 3 of them in a matter of 5, 6 seconds. Okay, go through that 10 times, no big deal. Then this is called around the world. You can already see how she's going from here all the way back. You want to get your hands in a comfortable position. You're going to go all the way back and then bring it all the way forward. Very simple. You can have a conversation with one of your teammates. How are you? What'd you do? What'd you eat? Go through that 8 times. Okay, look what it's doing for my back. And look what it's doing for my shoulder. It's addressing a lot of the planes, okay? Because you're always going forward. It's not very common that you reach back. So we need to make sure that we open up that shoulder, get those muscles primed, so when you do hit and in the event you miss, those muscles behind your shoulder blade are firing. Does that make sense? Okay, so I went through that 8 times. Pretty simple. No pain, and you can modify it actually. What's up? You can. As a matter of fact, there is a little bit more. It might even be of benefit to use a band so you maintain tension and then go all the way back, all the way forward. You're actually engaging the muscle that much more. I would encourage you to use like kind of change it up. Use a PVC pipe. Next time use a band just to give it some creativity. But I do want you to just address that motion is the intent behind it. Okay? Any questions on this? Good. So then the next thing is, if there's bands around here, and Louie, I might have introduced these. Okay, good. These are good ways to get, this first one is a wall slide with extension. It's 15 times. And I'm going to give you my, you're going to side profile me. You'll put the bands, or you can notice that they're around her wrists. What you want to do is you're going to start here. Has anyone done the YMCA before? The dance, literally. You've heard of it. Okay, good. If you didn't, I'd be concerned. So you want to do the Y. You're here. You're going to create that tension. And imagine there's a wall here. You're going to create that tension. And then what I want you to take notice is that she's lifting away from the wall. Okay, so it's here and then back, rest back on the wall and slide back down. Okay, this is for here, this motion here, you're engaging these muscles. Once you lift off, then you're starting to address more thoracic mobility. You can kind of see that these exercises are catered to the back part of your shoulder because we need to make sure that those muscles are firing. The deceleration, right, when you're here and you need to come back to get ready, that's just as important as the acceleration moment when you're actually trying to hit somebody. Does that make sense? So if we can get those muscles to fire even better, your ability to be clean, crisp, and more efficient with your punches are going to be there because we're going to make these muscles, basically, I call them shoulder primers. They're going to be primed for that type stuff, okay? Then the pull aparts, same thing. You just have the band here, thumbs up, and just pull apart. Pinch those shoulder blades. Pretty simple stuff, okay? This one's a really good one. I found it very applicable for this setting because when you think about the impact that you make when you're here, you take your body, you rotate across, and then you come this way, correct? When you're doing this specific motion, and I won't make you do it, you want to use a kettlebell, and I'm demonstrating it really well, but I'm going to show you in person. So when you're down here, right, you want to lift it up safely, go in this position. You want to do it bell side up. This makes it a little more challenging, okay? I'm relaxed. You're going to reach towards the ceiling. You're going to rotate inward. You're now firing those muscles in the back part of your shoulder. Then you're going to rotate outward, back to the middle, and drop back down, okay? You're really activating every single muscle. The minute you punch, all of those muscles that make up your shoulder capsule need to be firing. That is what's happening here. Cool? And then you bring it back down. If you want to make it even harder, you can get all the way up and work right in there. Cool? Okay.
Now, can you demonstrate with a 20 pound?
No, 10 pounds is good. Okay. Any questions on this one? Yeah, if you can tolerate, I want it to be challenging enough to where you can get 6 to 8 reps, right? 2 rounds mostly. So if you're here and you're just like going through it real quickly with 10 pounds, like that was fairly challenging. You could probably do 12 pounds maybe, but you want it to be challenging enough to where you feel like you're actively trying to stabilize it, because when you do it bell side up, you're now creating more stabilization for your shoulder, right? If you were to hold it basically here, it's no longer as challenging. The intent is to make sure all the muscles are firing again as a team.
And in that specific exercise, what's your rep?
Oh, geez. Oh, 8 reps. 6 to 8 reps. Excuse me. Let me get it open again. There's only one more exercise that I'm going to talk about. So 6 to 8 reps, and I'll have in the guide, all the reps will be there, okay? Since I'm talking about it, it seems a little bit longer, but when you go through it, I did it myself, it takes about 5 to 6 minutes. So you guys can knock that out pretty quickly on your own, okay? The last one is a ball slam. So I can't pause it here, but what I want you to take notice is that when I go all the way up, there's a triple extension moment. When you are going all the way through to actually impact with another person, you are getting an extension moment from your hip, you're getting an extension moment from your knee and from your ankle if you're using your body the way you should be to effectively hit somebody or to effectively make contact. This is very similar to that. And you have to generate a lot of power. What I also want you to take notice on, we'll play it again, is where I receive the ball, right there, you can see how it reverberates through my body. That's kind of getting you primed to receive impact when you're actually impacting with the bag, an opponent, something like that. Ball slams are really good for you guys, especially with the power, right? That's important. You need to have a lot of power. And I'm using my entire body because you want to use your entire body when you're actually trying to make impact. Does all that make sense? Cool. You could use that too, actually. If you think about the motion all the way up and then following through, go for it. I just like this one more so because if you use a heavy enough ball, that was only 14 pounds, you could find a 20-pound ball and then you try slamming it while maintaining good contact or good extension all the way up and then taking it all the way down. That transfer of power is important because the transfer of power here, is kind of the same thing. Does all that make sense? Okay. Any questions on that? All right. Guys, you've been great. Pretty short, pretty sweet, and to the point.